Hi everyone, Ryan here with Fight Game Analysis, and today we're going to be talking about the upcoming fight between Teofimo Lopez and George Kambosos. If you've been enjoying the content, please go ahead and click on the like button and also subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate your support. Alright, so big fight coming up here for the 135-pound division. Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos. Now, the majority of us haven't heard of George Kambosos. He's a fighter out of Australia. A lot of times guys will have to make a pretty big splash before they make it over to the States, and that's really the only time that people other than the hardcore analysts and fans hear about him. So you got George Kambosos coming over here, fighting Teofimo Lopez. This is going to be the first time that a lot of people have seen him. Young guy, 27 years old, 19-0, 10 KOs on the record. Now, even though he's relatively unknown on this huge, big stage under the brightest of lights, it's not as though he doesn't have the work. When we look at his background, in his last two fights, he's beaten two former world champions. But prior to that, he's gotten a lot of work in camp with Manny Pacquiao. So he's been at the wild card. Freddie Roach speaks highly of him. Manny Pacquiao speaks highly of him. He comes in. He was one of the primary sparring partners for Pacquiao in some of his recent fights. Gives him a lot of good work. So the man is used to operating, to a certain degree, he's used to operating at that very high level, right? He's used to being in there with world-class practitioners. He's got a good style. Okay, he comes in, he applies pressure, but it's not too much. A lot of times we think of pressure fighters, it's like a bull in a china shop, coming in, just being relentless, imposing their will upon another man, breaking him down, right? When I think of like the quintessential pressure fighter, I think of a guy like Julio Cesar Chavez Sr., right? Just coming in and being relentless, body shots, everything else, and breaking the guy down. That's not what you're going to get out of George Kambosos. Now, that being said, he is a pressure fighter and does apply pressure intelligently. Comes in, he likes to work behind the jab, not excessively, right? He really likes to be a power puncher. He really likes to get into range, likes to land big hooks, likes to come in and do his work at middle to close distance. He's got some decent footwork. He's got some decent head movement, but he's not the fastest in the bunch. So, give you an example here. We see him against a former world champion like Mickey Bey. Mickey Bey's got a pretty good jab. In the first and the second round, Mickey Bey was able to get that jab off. He's got quick hands. He's got a good jab. He's got good footwork. He was able to do his work against Kambosos. You know, Kambosos needed a little bit of time before he was able to get the distance, get the speed, get the rhythm, find out exactly how it is that he wanted to close that distance. By the third round, he was starting able to come over the top of Mickey Bey's jab. He was starting to close the distance a little bit more. He was starting to get into the range that he wanted. And then throughout the rest of the fight, he was able to do much more of the work that he wanted, up to and including winning that fight. Ideally, he likes to come in and then close that gap. And you know, guys are fresh, guys are fast, first, second round, early in the fight. Sometimes that's a little bit more difficult. Same thing we saw against Lee Selby, right? Except he had even faster feet. He uses even more footwork. But it only took a few rounds before Kambosos was able to get in there and start to get his work done, start to get over the top of the jab, start to close the distance the way that he wants to, start to control the gap. That being said, it isn't always smooth. I mean, number one, he uses good feints. Right, moves his hands a little bit, moves his head a little bit. So it's not exactly like he's a sitting duck when he's coming in, but he's not great at it either. He's not great at parrying shots. He's not great at getting underneath things. He does good. When he's coming in, he also doesn't have the fastest feet. You know, it's good footwork. His feet have decent speed, but it's not great. What's that mean? That means when you come up against a guy who's got faster feet or a guy who's got better timing or something, what you see from Kambosos is that he ends up overextending a little bit. He ends up reaching. I mean, and we even see this in the interviews from Teofimo Lopez's dad coming up to this fight. He compares Kambosos to the Diego Magdalena fight, right? He said he comes in, he leans forward a little bit too much. Easy fight for my son. And I get where he's coming from that. That's actually a correct analysis. He does lean forward. He does overextend on some of his punches. He does get off balance. That's due to his feet not being quite as fast as he wants and the aggression that he's gotten wanting to get in there and land those punches. Standing across from him on Saturday night, we've got the champ, Teofimo Lopez. Man, I'm high on this dude right now. He came out in his last fight and fought a phenomenal fight. I'll be honest, made a video on that one going into it. I thought that Lomachenko was going to be too much. I thought Lomachenko was going to be able to come out with a victory. You know, as good as Teofimo Lopez looked going into that fight, what I thought was going to happen was that it was going to be the fight IQ and ultimately the angles and the footwork it was going to be too much for Lopez. Lopez has somewhat of a flat-footed style. I mean, he's athletic, super explosive, all that, but he's somewhat flat-footed. And I thought Lomachenko was going to be able to capitalize on that and really end up coming away with the victory. Completely wrong. I mean, Lomachenko had his moments, But Teofimo Lopez went out there in that last fight and fought a masterpiece, man. I mean, the way he went to the body early, I mean, he's so athletic, so explosive. He's got like twitchy speed, right? I mean, he gets off. He's got this move where he shoots the right hand and almost and like follows through with the right foot to go into that southpaw stance. You know, he likes to fight with a Floyd Mayweather type of style, right? So he comes forward, he's flat-footed, likes to fight behind that shoulder roll, gets that left shoulder out there where he likes to parry his shots. And sometimes that works out and sometimes it doesn't. But we saw it to perfection against Lomachenko. He was just able to go out there, land with power. He was able to apply pressure, back him up, dictate the pace, dictate the rhythm, dictate where the fight happened on the outside of the ring versus in the middle, where Lomachenko's able to do more of what he wants with his footwork and creating small circles and turning. When Lomachenko was trying to cut his angles and get inside, Lopez pivoted beautifully to take those angles away. It was really a great fight. And to be perfectly honest with you, not only did he win that decisively, I expected to give him even more confidence, and I expect him to learn little new wrinkles about the game from that fight. I mean, that's what happens when you go against somebody who was the pound-for-pound best. Somebody who's won 2 Olympic gold medals and done as great as Lomachenko's done. When you go in there and you beat a man like that, even if you lose to him, you learn something from that fight. And I fully believe that Lopez, at only 23 years old, still so young in the game, accomplished so much. I expect him to come out from that fight even better. As I mentioned, his style, he comes out, he's flat-footed for the most part. He can move back when he wants to. He can bounce. He's incredibly explosive and athletic. When I say flat-footed, this isn't an Adrian Broner. This isn't a guy that you're going to be able to cut deep angles on, move, pivot. This isn't a guy whose flat-footedness is a liability. His flat-footed style, honestly, I think he chooses to. It's because he wants to land with so much power. He is a boxer puncher all day. He wants to come in there. He wants to throw these shots and hurt you. So he's fighting out of this shoulder roll defense, likes to have that left shoulder forward. And what he does really well from it is he uses it to transition to his offense. He's great at going between defensive and offense. So someone comes out there, they're working the jab, they're trying to go to the body, whatever it is. He catches and parries shots incredibly well. We saw that against Diego Magdaleno. Lopez, on more than one occasion, beautifully caught the punch with his right hand and then returned with the same hand, which isn't exactly easy. You do not see a lot of guys do that. Even when guys catch and return, they'll do it with the opposite hands. Catch something in my right glove and return with a left punch. He was returning with the same one. With uppercuts, he returned with some of them with straight punches. He looked really good all the way around in that fight doing that. Showed that he's fast. The way he comes in, he'll hop to close the distance. He doesn't always do things slow and methodically. He'll hop to create angles. He's a really talented fighter in that regard. All that being said, his game is far from perfect. And I think he got, I use the term exposed loosely, but I think we saw the most flaws in his game or the most holes in his game when he fought Nakatani. Fighting behind that shoulder roll defense, one of the things that is a problem is the jab. Floyd Mayweather Sr. said it back when he was teaching Oscar De La Hoya. Floyd Mayweather Jr. has said it, although sparingly in rare interviews because that's how he fights, so he doesn't like to exactly expose that. But go ahead and watch in some of his fights. I believe it was Shane Mosley and Oscar De La Hoya that were able to land the jab. I mean, remember when his nose got bloodied? Remember when Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s nose got bloodied in that fight? I think that was from jabs against Shane Mosley. Correct me if I'm wrong. But when you're fighting in that style, when you're a little bit more flat-footed and you're fighting with that behind that shoulder roll, it's the jab that's the problem. That's how come if a fighter came out and started to try to land the jab with consistency, Floyd would immediately switch up. Wouldn't fight behind that shoulder roll anymore. He would put his hands up and kind of try to use his pull counter over the top of the jab to take it away. Because he knows that he's not going to be able to be effective fighting out of that shoulder roll if a guy's out there trying to work his jab and he has a good jab. So we saw that with Nakatani. We saw a tall fighter with a good jab, clean, straight right hands, gave Lopez a lot of problems. Right? That's really something that he needs to work on. And I think he realizes that he needs to work on it. He just brought in that new coach, former Cuban coach. He's worked with all kinds of Cuban fighters, Guillermo Rigondeaux, I want to say Erislandy Lara. He brought in Jorge Rubio. And you can see from some of the films that some of the little clips that he's been posting on Instagram, some of the things that we see on YouTube, he's really working on a lot of defense. He's working on even more head movement, even more upper body movement, even more ways in which he's catching the shots and returning them. Lopez is a beast, man, and he's going to be a handful for anybody. Now, I'm also surprised he's still at 135. He is super big and strong for the division. I thought at this time that he was going to come up, he was going to take Lomachenko, he was going to get the belts, put that on his resume, and then move on up to 140. But he can still make the weight, so he's still down here making noise. But We don't know how much longer that's going to be. All that being said, what's it going to look like when these two step in the ring with each other on Saturday night? First things first, I got Lopez winning this fight all day. Really don't think it's going to be that close of one. Styles make fights, and I think Lopez is a horrible style matchup for Kambosos. Right now, especially at 135 pounds, you want to give a big, strong, athletic guy like Lopez trouble, you got to do what Nakatani did. You got to have that jab. You got to have that straight right hand. You got to have some good footwork and have a really high fight IQ. That's the way that you're going to be able to give him trouble and get him out of his comfort zone. You let him come forward. You let him do what he wants. I don't think anybody's going to be able to beat him at his game. And the thing about Kambosos is he doesn't have that jab like that. He doesn't have that type of footwork. He comes in, overextends, leans forward, gets a little bit off balance. That is just prime trouble for him. That is just going to be such easy pickings, in my opinion, for Lopez. Man, he's so comfortable in the pocket. He's so comfortable catching shots and returning. When Kambosos tries to pressure him, when he tries to come forward, Lopez is going to be right there ready to counter those shots. He's going to catch that jab and come over the top. When Kambosos tries to come in, he's going to block and use some upper body movement and return shots with fast uppercuts. He's got far faster hands than Kambosos does. At the end of the day, I'd be surprised if this one made it past 6. I do. Lopez is at the peak of his game right now, and I think Kambosos is going to be in for some trouble. Let me know what you guys think. Is this going to be another showcase type performance for Teofimo Lopez? He comes out and continues to prove why he's the best at 135 pounds? Or is this going to be the upset party and George Kambosos comes over from Australia and shows everybody why, even though he's been flying under the radar, he's actually the man that everybody needs to worry about at 135 pounds? Let me know what you think.